So my buddy got a hold of me. He needed me to work on his RZR for him. I'm going to go ahead and do a full service oil change, do the differentials, transmission, and he has a few accessories he wanted done, and I also got to change the belt. But he got some extra wide rear fenders to add to this. He already had the front fenders on it, and I've got to fix this one. He accidentally caught a tree one day and he ripped this one off. So I got to do some fixing to this and put this fender back on, and probably going to do a redneck repair to that with some zip ties, I'm guessing. But he's also got some new B-block tires and wheels coming. I'll put those on. So I'll get started on this and show you guys the process and what happens. So on this fender piece here, it doesn't want to line up just quite right from such a jagged break. So I'm just going to take the grinder and just touch these edges on both these pieces so they'll line up in there just a little bit better, and then I can drill holes and stick some zip ties in there. So I want to note that some of what I was doing here, and the reason being, he tried to glue this back on and there was some glue residue that wasn't letting this sit right. So this piece, it fits in here a lot better now. It actually lines back up like it's supposed to. And I'm just going to go ahead and drill some small holes in here. And then we're just going to fish some small zip ties through from the back side so that the head of them isn't showing. I know this is a crude way of doing things, but I used black zip ties, I used really small zip ties, and I tried to keep it in areas where you're not going to really see it. The nice thing is, this bike is dark. You're going to have to really be looking, especially if there's just a little bit of mud on this. So that'll at least hold that piece in there so it's not going anywhere to hold the corner of the fender. So on fixing this fender tab right here, it's kind of another crude method, and it's simply a piece of sheet metal drilled out, and I'm going to slip it onto the back side and run some sheet metal screws into here so that whenever you put this tab back on here, it's actually grabbing into something. So whenever you tighten the outside fender, you won't be able to, the fender will cover the two sheet metal screws up, so you won't be able to see those. See, and that'll go just like that, and then you'll be able to actually slip your clip on here, and that bolt will be able to tighten up against that, and it'll be pulling on it then. So that'll take care of that. I got to, this one here is going to be a little bit more complicated. I don't know if you can see where that one ripped out, because there's not much really here for it to get a hold of. I'll probably have to stretch a strap clear across here and bend it to even get it into the right spot. So I'm going to try to modify that real quick. So on this one here, same thing. This one here's got the bends in it, and it had to step up in order to get up into the hole where it goes. And there's what that turned out to look like. Got the clip slid up on it. There's that one. And I'm just going to go ahead and bolt this fender back on here real quick. You can see how that one there tightened right up. That one did the same. And there's that fender reinstalled. Nice and tight. Ain't going nowhere. So to install these rear fender flares, it's about as basic as it gets. Just pull out the screws, and there's a push tab there, and literally pull this fender off and put the other one back on. Same exact spot, same hardware, everything. And down under here, there is 1, 2, and 3 push pins. And these are the Super ATV extra wide rear fender flares. And it's literally pop that off. And it's just pop that one off, pop this one on, and put the screws back in. And then reinstall your push pins. It's that simple. So I'm gonna get ready and go ahead and change the belt. And you don't have to do everything that I'm doing to change the belt, but when you're in a garage and you got tools, it sure as hell makes it a lot easier if you do. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pull off the tire and take the bottom bolt out of the shock so it can swing up, and then you can unhook that intake cover right there on the belt cover and pop it right off. Nice and easy. And like that, you got the belt cover off. Next, I'm going to roll that belt off there. So, in the glove box of the RZR, you're going to find this little tool pouch. And in there, there are... see if I can find it here. I'm going to change this. I'll probably end up just using a big screwdriver. There used to be some black wrenches in there on those 1000s. They kind of goofy looking. But anyhow, basically what you do is you insert it right here onto this clutch. And whenever you shove that shiv in, it actually spreads this and loosens that belt up and gives you enough slack that you can roll it off there. So I went ahead and used this goofy looking square thing that it gave you. And basically you just shove it in here like this. Whenever you pull out on it, it shoves the shiv back. It gives you clearance. And I don't know if you can see, that belt was sitting up on top there, and now it's sank down in with slack in it. And now you can literally come over here and just say grab the bottom of it and spin it. As you spin this, this clutch tries to close, and that's what it's doing to me right now. I have to pinch that belt in there. Sometimes you just got to work it out. But easy wrench to go. I'll show you what I mean here. You get this in here and just pry on it and see how it opened that clutch back up. That belt starts sliding back up out of there. Sometimes you can go here on the lower one if you can get to it. to set the camera down. And just like that, there's your old belt. There wasn't actually anything wrong with his belt. It wasn't slipping or anything. He was just worried about it because he's got, I don't know, I think a little over 2,000 miles on this. And so we're going to go ahead and swap it out, and he's going to save this one for a spare. So I'm going to roll that new one back on there. One other quick tip before I forget. On these belts, they recommend that you put them on so that you could read them. So in other words, whenever I put this one on, it's going to go on like this. So. And like that, there's the new one. Just spin it around a few times and it'll tighten itself back out there like it's supposed to be. And that's that simple for changing the belt. Then you just gotta put it back together. There you have it. It's literally that easy. I mean, it astounds me sometimes that people take stuff to like the dealership to have this stuff done. Because dealers usually charge roughly $100 an hour for labor. And that job right there took me, I'm going to say a tops of 20 minutes, and they probably would charge 2 hours of labor minimum for that. Next thing, I'm going to be going underneath and dropping the oil out and the tranny and rear diff fluid. They're together in one piece on this bike. So it's just two drain plugs, one for the engine oil, one for the transmission and rear differential. So the drain plugs on Polaris, they are actually Allen heads. And if my memory serves me right, it should be a 6mm one for the engine. Try to get all the crud out of my way. Yep, 6mm. These things usually break hard and sound awful. Like that. Even flips my ratchet around usually. The engine oil's pretty clean. I mean, it's just a little bit brown, but I don't know if you can see how clear that is on there or not. Like I said, it's not black or anything. It's not burnt either. So I'll let that drain out and then I'll do the differential. And it's always good practice to change that copper washer right there. I mean, you can get away without doing it. I've done it several times, sometimes whenever I was too cheap to do it on mine. But it's a good thing to do. It's about done draining. And that's the engine oil. Now we'll get the rear diff here. I can't remember if it's 6 or if it's an 8 mil. I think it's 8. What I say? And on the diffs, yeah, it's 8 mil. On the diffs, the fill plug is the same size as the drain plug. Oh boy, out there just barely snug. And there's that. The fluid that goes in this is a purple color. This, it don't look bad. I don't think it's ever been, I think this is the first change on it. It's got some metal shavings on it, but on that magnet, but it ain't real hateful. I've seen a lot worse. And that stuff there, it drains out pretty quick. It's thin. It's basically like hydraulic oil. Consistency wise. So on the rear diff, fill plug right here in the back, nice and very convenient to get to. On the 800s, back whenever they first came out, you know, the machine itself, everybody thought it was great, and for the time it really was, but whenever you went to do maintenance on them, I mean, it was just a pain, because everything was hard to get to. And even on the oil filter was in a really crappy spot, hard to get to. These ones, they actually gave you an access panel up here in between the two seats to even get to the oil filter. I'll show you guys that here in a minute. But normally I use I have a suction gun that I'll put the fluid in here with, but I think I have a stretchy funnel to make this a little quicker and just dump this stuff in here. I forgot, I got me this fancy funnel here with this rubber hose on it. I ought to be able to just dump this stuff right down in here. And this holds just under 2 quarts. On everybody else's bikes, I use the factory Polaris fluids. This is AGL. And just put the plug back in it after you fill it up. And this is the fill plug is how you know it's full. It just overflows out, and that's as simple as that. To change the oil filter on these, they have this little access panel you can remove between the two seats. And right, just looking back in there, right there's the oil filter. My 1000, one of the 1000s I had the subwoofer that went back here, and it actually sat recessed back in here, and the speaker come up through here. So to get to the oil filter, you had to reach through the passenger side. It wasn't that big of a deal. You just couldn't really see what you were doing. So I'm gonna reach in there and unscrew that and change that out real quick. That's really tight. All right, channel locks it is to the rescue. There we go. Just in case you don't know, always smear a little bit of new oil on the O-ring so that you don't have that issue that I just had. As far as putting oil in the engine, there's a compartment tray that pulls out in the bed. So I've got to undo his cooler and take it out in order to get to it. And then underneath that is up here. Bob, old buddy, if you're watching this, I'm gonna start billing for cleaning charges at this rate. end underneath there. There's the oil fill cap. Simple enough, dump it in, and then pull the dipstick. It's right in, right there. And check the oil, just like you would in a car. And then in here, you're just gonna reach in and pull your dipstick. Boy, it's gonna be hard to get the focus on. You can see it's right there at the top hole. It's on the full mark. Perfect. Nice crystal clear oil. That's what you want. I'm just gonna tell you a side story on this Blake. We were riding one day and he actually had a stick go through the radiator, and I changed the radiator out for him. And in order to bleed the cooling system on this, they actually have a vent plug in the cylinder head, and it's right underneath here. And the only way to get to it, because you can't access it from the other sides real easy, and you can't get your hand down in here. You can cheat a little bit with this aluminum pan. Instead of taking it clear out, what I did on his, I literally unbolted it and bent it a little bit out of my way, and I got in there. You can crack the bleeder screw, let the coolant back out, and this thing is so flexible. Just bent it right back into place, put the bolt back in it, and done. So I'm going to go ahead and do this front diff too real quick. The drain plug is right here. I don't know if you can see all that dirt falling out. So I'm going to have to chisel all that out. And it's also an 8mm Allen head, and so will the fill plug be. There it went. That there's a little milky, because this stuff's almost crystal clear whenever you put it in. It's not too hateful, but... So on these front diffs, the fill plug is in here, and you pretty much have to use one of these suction guns. And it just looks like a grease gun with a hose on it. And you're going to want to do this. These front diffs just, they hold like 1/3 of a quart. So 1 quart of this demand drive will change your diff 3 times usually. So I'm going to get this plug out, and I'll show you guys how to put the fluid in. So on these suction guns, the easiest thing for me to do is just take the lid off and dump the fluid in it. And then you just literally stick this hose in there, and you can shove on this handle. And it pushes the fluid out. And this is just like the rear diff. Whenever you get it full, like that, it runs out. It's that simple. Yeah, it's a new day in the shop again. So last night, whenever I was doing a service on this and I changed the belt, I discovered that this driver's side rear wheel bearing was bad, and he actually managed to find me one today. So I'm going to get this tore apart, and then tomorrow I'll take it to work and press that bearing out, and hopefully I'll be able to record that and show you guys that process. And so I'm going to go ahead and start tearing this back apart here. So I went ahead and got this thing jacked up, put on stands, and got the jack underneath the trailing arm. I pulled both back tires because I got to change all the brake pads on this thing too as well. So it was just as easy to do all that. Let's see here. And the reason you got to put the jack under the trailing arm is because these bottom bolts for this caliper, when it's suspended, they actually they're in there in a spot where you can't get anything on them. So you've got to compress, bring it up to be able to reach it. Look at there. Wasn't even tight. Oh boy, come on now. Alright, good. I've had these come off before, and that inner race stay on this hub, and it's a pain to get them off there. And there's the hub off there. So my buddy just showed up to drop off that wheel bearing, and he brought his new tires and wheels with him. And we're gonna look pretty good on there. 32s. They ought to raise her up a little bit. So I just went ahead and tore this side apart because it's the same as the other to tear it apart. On these Polaris calipers, you have to compress them in, and these slides will slide over far enough and it'll let you pull these pads down and out of here. I may need a bigger pair of channel locks to do this, but once that's compressed, sometimes you gotta squeeze a little bit more. That pad just flips out of there like that and pulls off. And that's off of the old pads. And then with your new pads, it's just the opposite. Just take that one and slide it on there and swing it around. There's one. And there's two. And that's all there is to it, changing the pads. And then you just bolt your caliper back on it. So I'm pretty time sensitive on this project here, so I didn't record doing the front. But we went ahead and just swapped out those pads and mounted up these new tires and wheels, and man, they look good on there. So tomorrow, after I get that wheel bearing changed, I'll come home and I'll slap that back together and show you guys that real quick. And this bike's done. It's ready to go out of here. So on these Polaris wheel bearings, they have a big snap ring in here. All I got here is these cheap snap ring pliers. I'm gonna try to get it out of here with these. Oh yeah. So once you pop that off, I actually have bought these online one time. It's Quad Logic bearing installer and stuff. Got all my wheel bearing greasers in there. Anyhow, so I'll take this over to the press. But this gives you a sleeve to set that on. Whenever I bought this, it was actually for the 800s and stuff, or maybe it was for the 1000s. I can't remember. Anyhow, I had to take a grinder and grind these edges just a little bit to get it to fit in the 800 bearings. That's right, they're smaller. But basically, you just take this and you can set it on here, and it'll you put the press on this, and it'll shove the old bearing out, and then you just do the opposite for whenever you add the new bearing, except this here is to catch the outer race, so it'll fit on there like that, and it shoves that new one down in there. So I'll show you guys how to do that here in just a second. This press here at work, there's nothing fancy or anything special about it. It was actually pretty much homemade. The guys at the maintenance shop built it. But so to push this bearing out, you just get it in there, and just like I showed you how it sat up. And these have never been changed, so the first one's gonna go really hard. Yep, there it went. There's the old bearing out. Put these new ones back in. Usually set them in here and make sure you get them good and level to start. And then, like I showed you how these tabs, they actually sit on there and they catch that outer race so that you're not pushing on your bearings. It's in there. And just like that, it's in there flush. Go in, put your snap ring back on, and you're done. Well, I got the wheel bearing put in and everything. I'm gonna put this thing back together here real quick. this axle nut. I'm just snugging this up because these have to be torqued to 80 foot-pounds. I'm gonna go get my torque wrench. I bought a new one. So Harbor Freight had these Quinn torque wrenches on sale, or for their parking lot sale over last weekend. So I went ahead and bought one. I'm gonna try it out. That's set on 80 foot-pounds. Well, I guess it works. That's 80 foot-pounds on the wheel bearings. At least that's what the 800 and stuff called for. That's that. I'll put the tire on there and this bike is done. So on these aftermarket wheels, on most of your aftermarket wheels, they come with these keyed lug nuts because a regular lug nut won't allow a socket to fit on it down inside the hole of the wheel. So you have to have this special adapter. That's that. That is the complete full service. That's engine oil, filter, rear diff transmission, front differential, all new brake pads, a new belt, and one new wheel bearing in that. That was the full service for a Polaris RZR 1000 XP. And now he's ready to go for riding season. And with his brand new wheels and 32-inch megabyte tires. So if you guys like videos like this and you want to see more, go check out the rest of my channel. I'm going to try to do weekly video drops. So like and subscribe.